The Symbology of Mantegna's The Adoration of the Shepherds. Today I've got something a little different for the channel. As part of looking at culture, I thought it might be nice to look at a few artworks in detail and give some context to them. Today we're going to be looking at the highly understated but symbolically deep work, The Adoration of the Shepherds by Mantegna. Mantegna, born in 1430 in Italy, is one of the underrated masters of the Middle Renaissance period, known as the Quattrocentro. He was exceedingly young when working on this picture, only 21 years of age, which is a true testament to his ability to build on local traditions while still using the power of symbology to create further meaning in his work. To understand the painting, we must understand the world that Mantegna is in. Definitions and dates of the Renaissance vary wildly, but the classical approach would consider the work of Giotto as its start, and the death of Titian as its end. A more helpful way of understanding the period is dividing it into three centuries: the Trecento, Quattrocento, and Cinquecento. Mantegna is painting in the middle of this middle century. This allows him to pull on scenes and ideas already built up, but at the same time gives him the free space to reimagine them. In terms of other schools at the time, both the Sienese and the Florentine were well established, but the Quattrocento is punctuated by a number of other schools coming to bear fruit, with the Venetians, the Romans and the Ferrarans all providing brilliant works. Giotto dominates the Trecento and is heavily influential in the beginnings of the Quattrocento as well. Many of his pupils would fan out across the Italian countryside, creating works in various city-states, and thus influencing the whole of Italy. His work often reinvents many traditional scenes, offering complex compositions of multiple groups, and attempts to bring perspective into his work, drawing us into the picture. The Northern Renaissance is also in full swing, with the two great giants of the so-called Flemish primitives, Jan van Eyck, Rogier van der Weyden, creating oil paintings that stir the passions masterfully. They focus on precision, spending hours adding tiny, insignificant details to the background that only the seeker will find. The hidden symbol is another key part of their work, where even a bird may have significant meaning to a part of the painting. Mantegna, as a young painter, lived in Padua. It's a small town close to Venice. Padua, a previously successful city-state, came under the rule of the Venetian Republic in 1405. We cannot discount the influence from Venice to the Paduan school at this point, and from that, the connections to Byzantine work. Venice, following the disastrous Fourth Crusade, had pillaged Constantinople of both arts and artists, with a large Greek quarter residing in the city. These plundered Byzantine works would have been seen by local Venetian artists and visitors. Furthermore, connections with Northern Europe, especially Austria and Germany, were strong in Padua, and this may have had an effect on his artistic development. He was apprenticed to Francesco Squacchione. Sadly, there are only a few pieces of his work remaining, but we do know a little about his life. He originally trained as a tailor before becoming an artist. From what we can see of Francesco's work, we can see influences from both the Florentines, but also that northern attention to detail, with the background shown in great depth and a symbolic fruit placed in the foreground. We can also see some elements of the classical revival starting to show, with the Romanesque fruit garland above Mary. All of these influences would be drawn upon by Mantegna. There are two paintings in Padua at the time of Mantegna that I think would have had a significant influence on this work. Articerio de Zavio, The Adoration of the Magi, which is in the Oratorio di San Giorgio, Padua, painted in 1378 to 84. Quista de Menabui, Scenes from the Life of Christ, 1378. Both of these artists come out of the Florentine school and were apprenticed to Giotto, and the frescoes resided in prominent churches in the heart of Padua that Mantegna would have most definitely seen. The scene. The scene is the Adoration of the Shepherds, as the title of the painting proclaims, and it stems from part of the biblical Nativity story. The passage from Luke 2, verses 8 to 18, sets the scene. And there were in the same country shepherds abiding in the field, keeping watch over their flock by night. And lo, the angel of the Lord came upon them, and the glory of the Lord shone round about them, and they were sore afraid. And the angel said unto them, Fear not, for behold, I bring you good tidings of great joy, which shall be to all people. For unto you is born this day in the city of David a Saviour, which is Christ the Lord. And this shall be a sign unto you. You shall find the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes, lying in a manger. And suddenly there was with the angel a multitude of the heavenly host, praising God, and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and on earth peace, goodwill towards men. And it came to pass, as the angels were gone away from them into heaven, the shepherds said to one another, Let us now go even unto Bethlehem, and see this thing which is come to pass, which the Lord hath made known unto us. And they came with haste, and found Mary and Joseph, and the babe lying in a manger. And when they had seen it, they made known abroad the saying which was told them concerning this child. And all they that heard it wondered at those things which were told to them by the shepherds. The detail. Placed at the centre of the composition, we see the Virgin kneeling on the floor and praying to the Christ child. Christ is placed directly on the floor, showing us the conditions of the stable. There is no suitable place for his head to rest. But luckily for that sweet babe, we see the tail of Mary's cloak wrapped around the child's body. Christ himself is placed at what first seems to be an awkward angle. Rather than a simple profile, Mantegna shows his ability to foreshore them with this angled, lateral view, giving us a sense of depth right at the centre of the painting. The pair gaze into each other's eyes, the innocence of both faces creating a moment of serene understanding. We see a golden tinge of light emanating from the child and Mary's face, represented in the highlights of the Virgin's garment, which have been kissed by this holy light. The couple are surrounded by helpful cherubs, who, emerging out of a thick blue cloud at the back of the Virgin, helps Christ's head and attends to Mary in her vigil. The earthy colours of half of this merry group contrasts with the supernatural fiery nature of the orange cherubs, connecting both heaven and earth. Joseph is an interesting figure for this composition. He sits to the side, asleep and unaware of the event. The way that his body is slumped is very evocative. Maybe Mantegna is showing how Joseph is missing out on these moments. Only Mary has the faith to stay awake at this time. Even his halo, which is solid and tangible above the head of Mary, sits faded above his. If we compare this Joseph to Altichiero's and Giusto's, we can see a few things. Part of the colour scheme for Joseph is pulled in, with the magnificent yellow cloak taken from one image, and the almost purple red of Altichiero's as the main robe. Altichiero has Joseph either very tired or with eyes almost closed in his adoration, and we can see that Mantegna took this idea and made it more prominent. Rather than standing up and resting, we are seeing Joseph face on with his body reclining into the picture. This kind of pose is substantially harder to execute than the profile or three-quarter view of the other earlier interpretations. Not only does it add depth to the picture, but it also lets him show off his ability to paint figures at all angles. There might also be some connection between his pose and Jesus's, creating a sense of unity in the picture. Moving to the background, we start to understand the setting. The relatively clear sky, sheep unshorn and fruit in bloom could put this picture as early spring. A single town building to the right of Mary shows that we're in Bethlehem, but the rampant nature which surrounds the scenes shows that we're on its edge. Two people are by that building. A man with a barrel, maybe waiting for a boat to arrive and transfer his goods. The woman sits down, and time passes her by. Behind the building stands a huge rock, which mirrors Mary's shape, showing her as a powerful, sublime force. Worthy of note is the detail of the rocks. When placed side by side, we can see that Mantegna is drawing from Byzantine depictions to create these solid structures that are purely imaginary, yet, by adding a sense of realism to them, create something unique and captivating. The family stand on the outside of a structure, which is confirmed to us to be a stable by the inquisitive head of a cow, which lazily looks on while chewing a mouthful of cud. The stable itself is almost obscured by a large citrus tree, which in its fruit reflects the fruit of the womb before Mary. A small fence on the side looks like it can barely contain the verdant plant that is almost bursting through, and a gourd fruit lies as a punctuation to that powerful growth. Nailed fast to the thick frames of the gnarled wooden frames are three horizontal planks, giving the effect, when zoomed out, of a ladder going to heaven, emanating from Mary. The citrus tree, while representing life, also gives us some foreshadowing to the death of Jesus and the judgment of man. For there are two branches which are missing from the tree, one ripped off, the other with a sharp, almost cut nature. We see this motif of life and death on another tree that sits to the centre right of the background. Three sets of branches have leaves, and one has its leaves stripped. There are three groups of shepherds in the scene, one in the far background, where it's very hard to see what's going on. Another, below the large tree, is being approached by an angel, and they're both having a conversation and looking out at Mary and the birth. The final set sits far from town in the top right hand side of the painting, well above everyone else in the mountains. The motif of the mountains can be seen in one of the earlier fresco work, as well as this movement from right to left. The shepherds are receiving the announcement of Christ's birth, and we see it's from that direction the group to the right of the painting. I think there's a numismatic connection between the three branches with leaves and one without. Could this signify the three groups of shepherds versus the group of people in town, the ignorant townies carrying on with their lives as if nothing happened? They are the dead branches that will be removed on Judgment Day. Before we look closer at the shepherd's party, we can see what looks like it might be a series of structures, quite possibly a building of some kind, sitting almost ghostly above the scene. Has the veil been lifted, and could this be a manifestation of the city of God that we can almost see coming into view? The background itself contains various paths which snake across the countryside, taking the traveller to various destinations. But we see there is only one pathway to Christ. "I am the way," he cries out. The shepherd's party are in two groups. The further away group walks across which looks like a relatively new bridge which spans the river we saw in the background. The new bridge signifies the reconnection between God and man. That Christ, through his sacrifice on the cross, becoming like a bridge over the chasm of sin. The pair are dishevelled and poor, but they bring gifts of what they have, a small basket of unknown goods. They may not have changed their outfits to their Sunday best, but they rush towards Christ in the state that they were when they heard the good news. The group in the foreground are in a similar state. Their bodies are stooped down, hats taken off in reverence. The faces are a departure from the tranquil beauty of Mary or the wise aging of Joseph, but a simple, humble men of the earth that wisely pay homage to their king. The rocky verge places them physically lower than Christ, showing their lower status and also acting like an altar for them to bow down to. The hyper-realist faces of the shepherds are no doubt derived from the influence from the northern schools. Their warts and all approach to people can often look a little uncanny and are a large departure from the smooth rounded faces of the traditional Italian schools like the Sienese. While both sets of shepherds' clothes are fragmented and broken, we see their spiritual alignment to God in their colours. Both sets of figures have blue and orange clothes, which connects them to Mary, Christ and the cherubs. Mantegna has had a little fun in this painting, and that is in the shepherd's attention. If you see their bodily direction and eyes, they are clearly not looking at Christ, but are in fact bowing down to Joseph. The simple mistake from men truly reflects Christ's humble birth, born as a naked child, rather than descending as a wise, aged prophet or resplendent king. Design. Stepping back from the detail, we can see how Mantegna has masterfully designed this work, creating weight on the canvas and balancing it. By placing a triangle in the painting, we can see the connection between the three major sets of figures, Mary, Joseph, and the first set of shepherds. The triangle itself is unevenly drawn, pulling us more to the left again, and giving a sense of powerful dynamism. There is also a coupling of figures with the background, again creating a sense of balance, but also a centering point, drawing the eye to Mary. The shepherds are balanced with a citrus tree, Joseph with the background tree, and the second shepherds with a stable cow. The bank in front of the shepherds, as well as the clouds and bridge, create horizontal lines, giving a sense of movement from right to left. This builds the narrative, from shepherd at the top right of the picture, to bridge, to Jesus at the centre. The Adoration of the Shepherds is a painting that gives up its story at a moment's viewing, but when examined closer, has layer after layer of detail heaped upon it. When looking, interpreting and understanding these hidden meanings, we are, for a moment, transported back in time to that place, viewing multiple moments of time all at once. The whole effect leaves us with a deep sense of the holiness of Christ, of the reverence of the shepherds, and the duty of the Virgin.